Hi, I'm Cressida. I built a fund to bring my family back together. A simple reunion, a weekend of healing. But then one notification changed everything. $50,000? Gone. No call, no warning, just silence. And when I found out who took it, let's just say it wasn't a stranger. Have you ever felt like your family kept you close just long enough to cut you out? Tell me in the comments. The coffee in my mug had gone cold long before I took the first sip. I was staring out the window of my office in downtown Portland, watching the early fog cling to the corners of buildings. Nothing felt urgent. Nothing felt wrong. Until it did. My phone buzzed. A notification from the banking app slid across the screen. Silver Reunion Fund. Withdrawal complete, $50,000. My thumb hovered. I blinked, thinking it was a mistake. I clicked into the app, my breath already catching before the numbers confirmed it. Gone. Every dollar I'd been saving for 2 years, money I tucked away month after month, drained in 5 separate transfers, all sent to one name, Delaney Quinn, my sister. The name burned against the screen, too familiar to be distant, too shocking to make sense. I scrolled through the transaction history, slowly connecting the dots. There were no deposits from anyone else, no joint contributions. Every cent had come from me. I wasn't saving for myself, I was saving for us. A reunion that could stitch something broken back together. A weekend to remember Dad. A place we could all belong. I was building something for everyone. And they gutted it behind my back. My fingers moved on autopilot, pulling up the account details. I needed to be wrong. I needed this to be some sort of digital glitch. I tapped through the ownership tab. Primary account holder, Lorraine Hale, my mother. I felt the heat rise to my ears. There was a moment months ago when I set up the fund and Mom insisted, "It'll be easier with my name on it, less paperwork for you." I didn't push back. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? Now the betrayal unfolded with cruel precision. Delaney took the money. Mom made it possible. I was the one who made the fund, and the only one left out of it. It's not just the money, I kept telling myself. It's what it stood for. It was the one thing I tried to do that wasn't about me, and they knew that. They counted on it. My office buzzed around me, but I couldn't hear it anymore. Everything shrank to the screen in my hand and the acid curling in my chest. I called the bank. The withdrawals were authorized. Nothing could be reversed. The tone in the banker's voice was polite, practiced. He didn't care that I was unraveling. I texted Mom. "Can we talk?" No reply. I didn't call Delaney. I couldn't yet. I wasn't sure if I'd scream or say nothing at all. I wasn't sure which one would hurt more. That night, sitting in bed with my laptop warming my legs, I opened Instagram. Delaney's newest post filled the screen. A photo of her on a sunlit hillside, arms outstretched in a white rehearsal dress, surrounded by friends, a caption that read, "Surrounded by love. Love funded by my silence, by my bank account, by my belief that family meant something more than blood." I closed the app and stared at the ceiling, feeling something in me, soft and hopeful, finally give way. I was lying on my couch, still in work clothes, the kind that never feel quite comfortable, but signal to the world that you have it together. My hair was pinned up. The apartment was dim except for the glow of my phone. I wasn't even scrolling for anything in particular, just a reflex, something to keep my hands busy while my mind sat in quiet rage. And then I saw it. Delaney, radiant in a soft ivory gown, arms outstretched, head tilted. The caption was casual, like always. Sneak peek, wedding week. But it wasn't the photo that made my breath hitch. It was the dress. I knew that neckline, that lacework, that subtle dip in the back. It wasn't a designer's trend. It wasn't something she pulled from Pinterest. It was mine. I had drawn that design in the corner booth of a coffee shop 5 years ago, with Daniel sitting across from me, sipping chai. "It's so you," he'd said, classic and soft, like you don't need to scream to be remembered. That wedding never happened. Neither did the honeymoon, or the house in Bend we'd picked out but never bought. What did happen was I folded that sketch, tucked it into a folder, and tried not to think about it again. Until tonight. I sat up, heart pounding in a slow, stunned rhythm. The sketch had never been posted, never been shared, except with one person. Cameron, my ex, Delaney's now boyfriend. The one who used to sit at my desk and flip through my ideas, always saying I should have been a designer. The one who ghosted me and showed up 6 months later at Delaney's birthday party with a bottle of rosé and a new smile. I grabbed my phone and called Joanna. It rang once, twice, then voicemail. No response. But the silence told me enough. I wasn't being paranoid. I was remembering. I was connecting threads that had always been there, just frayed enough not to notice until they pulled tight. A ping lit up my screen. A text from a mutual friend, someone from the old job we both left behind. "Did you see Delaney's dress? So beautiful. Cameron helped her pick it out, said he wanted something timeless. Thought of you." The message sat there like a bruise, soft but spreading. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why it always had to be her. Why she always got the things I hadn't even finished grieving. They took my money, my memories, my design. What else? My voice, my place at the table. I got up, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled the dusty folder from the second shelf. The sketch was still there, pencil lines smudged from years of being untouched. I stared at it, wondering how many pieces of me I'd left around for people to borrow. How many things I never claimed loudly enough to keep. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the folder. But something shifted, like a door clicking shut in a hallway of my chest. I opened Instagram one last time, not to scroll, not to look, just to delete it, not out of weakness, out of clarity. A week passed. I had texted Delaney once, Mom, twice, just short, quiet things, not confrontational, not dramatic, just, "Can we talk?" And, "Did something happen I don't know about?" Nothing came back. I checked my phone too often. And each time I told myself I wasn't looking for anything in particular. But the absence spoke. And I knew what it meant. Not a glitch, not a delay. Just silence. Deliberate. The following Saturday, I met Claire, an old co-worker, for lunch. She ordered a kale salad and told me about her new dog. It was easy catching up, until she asked, "Are you going to the rehearsal dinner next Friday?" I blinked. "What rehearsal dinner?" "For Delaney's wedding. Didn't you get the invite? I assumed you'd be involved. Aren't you the maid of honor?" I smiled, nodded, took a sip of water to hide the way my throat burned. "Things got complicated," I managed. She kept talking, unaware that every word felt like sand scraping across my skin. That night I opened my laptop. I didn't need to search much. Delaney wasn't even trying to hide it, just not posting directly to me. I clicked through vendor tags, pieced together dates, locations, even themes. Everything was booked, paid, finalized. They planned it without me. Not around me, not despite me, without me. I stared at the screen, heart heavy, but still. I didn't cry. I didn't send another message. Instead, I went deeper. There was a woman, a mutual friend from a holiday party last year, who once mentioned she had connections to the event planner Delaney loved. I called her on a hunch. She answered on the third ring, chipper. "Oh, I thought you'd be at the tasting." "The tasting?" Awkward pause. Then softly, "Oh, Lorraine told the team you wouldn't be attending, that you didn't want to be involved." There it was. Not a mistake, not a miscommunication, a choice. I ended the call politely, sat back in my chair, and let the weight of it settle in my chest like cold iron. They weren't being passive. They weren't avoiding discomfort. They were rewriting the narrative. Again. And I was the redacted footnote. I thought back to Thanksgiving 2 years ago. I made the entire meal, brined the turkey, baked the pies, polished the good silver. Delaney arrived 40 minutes late with a tray of macarons from a bakery downtown. Everyone raved about them. After dinner, she went out for drinks with friends. I stayed and scraped cranberry sauce from the dishes alone. I didn't name the pattern then, but now I saw it for what it was. I didn't scream. I didn't text. I just printed out the vendor list, circled the venue address in red ink, and folded it neatly into my planner. "If I'm not meant to be there," I whispered aloud, "then I'll choose how I arrive." Later that night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and titled it, "Things That Are Mine." At the top of the page, I wrote, my name, my voice, my place, and beneath that, a new line, my speech. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and elegant, the kind you only use for weddings or apologies. It came from Leah, folded inside a plain manila mailer with no return address. She wrote a note in blue pen. "I thought you deserved to see this." Inside was the official wedding invitation. Tucked into the back flap was a sticky note, handwritten in silver ink. "Do not send to Cressida. She always ruins everything." I didn't need to guess who wrote it. The calligraphy curled in the same way Delaney wrote her holiday cards, effortless, dramatic, self-satisfied. I ran my finger along the line, not to trace it, but to remind myself it was real. Leah texted me 2 minutes after the package arrived. "Want to get coffee?" We met at a small corner cafe near my office, a place with chipped mugs and creaky chairs. She didn't apologize for sending the invite. She apologized for not doing it sooner. "I wasn't supposed to show you," she said, her voice low. "But when I saw that note, I don't know. Something in me snapped." I nodded. I wasn't sure what to say. It was strange how silence could be louder than rage. "She's done it to others too," Leah added. "Cut people out. Made up stories. I was going to RSVP no anyway." It helped, a little, knowing it wasn't just me. But it also hurt more, realizing this was a pattern, not a one-time betrayal. I went home and opened the box of old photos I kept under the bed. I didn't know what I was looking for, maybe proof that things had once been different. But the photos only told one story. Delaney at her 10th birthday with a custom cake shaped like a ballerina. Me standing off to the side, smiling with frosting on my chin. A school recital where Delaney forgot her lines and still got a standing ovation. Me holding the mic steady for her, clapping like everyone else. Even in our childhood, I was the background, the one who clapped, not the one who was clapped for. I remembered our mother's voice echoing in the hallway once, just loud enough for me to hear from behind the door. "She's just different. She's too intense. She'll ruin it if she comes." Whispers don't have to be shouted to stick. They seep in over time. Quiet erosion. And by the time you notice the damage, it's already carved into your spine. I sat at my desk and folded the invitation neatly, placing it into a blank envelope. No dramatic reply, no all-caps response. Just one line in an email to my mother. "If you didn't want me there, you could have said it with your own handwriting." I hit send. Then I walked to my closet, pushed aside the safe neutrals and the dresses I wore for everyone else's events. In the back hung one deep green dress I hadn't touched in years. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't beg to belong. It was mine. The gravel crunched beneath my heels as I stepped out of the car, dress hem brushing lightly against my ankles. The late afternoon sun cast everything in that golden, too perfect light, like it was trying too hard to bless something that had already rotted underneath. Silver Pine Lodge stood tall and curated, covered in ivy and Instagrammable charm. I walked through the doors without hesitation, heart calm in a way that surprised me. The kind of calm that comes when you've stopped hoping for a seat and built your own table instead. The staff at the entrance stiffened. One held a clipboard, scanning for my name. "You're not on the list," she said gently. "I'm family," I answered. "And family doesn't always come with an RSVP." She faltered. Her eyes shifted behind me, unsure whether to stop me or let the room decide, but I was already inside. Everything smelled like expensive florals and citrus-drenched candles, the kind Delaney used to pretend were too strong, but somehow filled every room she touched. Lorraine saw me first. Mid-laugh, mid-conversation, mid-lie. Her face dropped like a curtain yanked from its rod. "You shouldn't be here, Cressida," she hissed as she approached, fingers wrapping tightly around her wine glass. "This isn't your place." I didn't raise my voice, just tilted my head and said, "I paid for the flowers." And then I walked past her. Delaney entered moments later, flanked by 2 bridesmaids, dress flowing like a ribbon in a commercial. Her smile was wide, her gaze controlled, until it caught mine. For a heartbeat, the whole room held its breath. Then the whispers started. I stood still, not dramatic, not cruel, just present, letting the truth of my presence do what silence never could. And then, unexpectedly, Silas walked toward me. He smiled. "I'm so glad you made it," he said. "I thought you'd be emceeing. Delaney told me you couldn't come, but honestly, I didn't believe her." His words didn't sting. They warmed something cold in me, only for a second. He didn't know he was putting his hand on a wound. I smiled softly, said nothing, and let him walk away. From the corner of my eye, I caught Cameron standing at the bar, half smirk, half guilt, entirely predictable. Some guests nodded politely as they passed me. Others avoided eye contact, pretending they didn't remember I existed. But I could feel their discomfort, a ripple in a pond they all thought was still. Then a server approached me with a flute of champagne. "Are you the one who saved this place?" she asked quietly, a kindness in her voice that caught me off guard. I took the glass, held her gaze, and smiled. "I suppose I am." I turned and walked toward the edge of the room, where the center aisle stretched out like a runway no one expected me to walk down. I didn't have to, I was already there. Let's see what she does now. The reception room sparkled with curated perfection. Gold accents, glowing centerpieces, glasses that chimed like soft bells when lifted. Delaney floated through it all like a queen on opening night. Her smile was practiced, even photogenic, but it didn't quite touch her eyes. I stood near the back, not hiding, but not imposing either. Watching. Breathing through the tightness that had followed me all day like a second skin. She saw me. Our eyes met across the room just for a second. Something in her jaw tightened, and then she turned away with that signature grace she'd always weaponized. Moments later, I felt a light touch on my arm. "Come with me," Delaney said through clenched teeth. She pulled me into a hallway just outside the powder room, still in view of the bar but far enough to pretend it was private. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Her voice shook slightly, but her posture was stiff, guarded. I didn't blink. "Doing what?" "You know what?" she snapped. "Showing up, standing there like a statue, making people feel awkward." "I'm not making them feel anything," I said. "I'm just here." That was the truth, but truth has a way of cutting deeper than lies. Her polished facade cracked, just slightly. Her eyes darted to the end of the hall, where a waiter passed with a tray of flutes. Her voice dropped an octave. "You always do this?" I waited. I didn't push. But then it came. "You always ruin everything for me." The words hit the air like glass shattering on tile. Loud, sharp, uncontained. A pause followed, long enough for a head or two to turn. Then came the ripple of whispers, the kind that feel like smoke on skin. I didn't flinch, but inside, something old and small stood up. 5 years old, pink dress, Delaney's birthday cake, a ballerina with sugared frosting and too much glitter. I had tripped and knocked it sideways trying to pass the juice box tray. Mom's voice from across the room, sharp as a slap. "You always ruin everything." And no one had said otherwise. I had carried that moment for decades like a secret bruise. Now it lived in her mouth, not mine. Delaney blinked, realizing too late what she'd said, where she'd said it. Her breath caught, but she didn't apologize. She turned on her heel and disappeared into the bridal suite, her train brushing the floor like a storm cloud. I stood there, letting the sound of champagne and string instruments wash back in. Lorraine appeared seconds later, lips tight. She glanced toward the suite door, then at me. "That's enough," she hissed. "If you say one more word tonight—" I cut her off, my voice calm but final. "You should have said that 30 years ago." She didn't respond, just stared at me, like she didn't recognize who I had become. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. But I knew I wasn't ruining anything. I was just no longer pretending I hadn't been erased. The ballroom had gone soft and golden, filled with the sound of clinking glasses and practiced laughter. Toasts were winding down, and the playlist had drifted into a loop of jazzy instrumentals that no one was really listening to. I sat near the back, quiet, invisible, but not silent. My fingers brushed the edge of the folder in my bag, feeling the crease of each page. Paper doesn't lie, numbers don't forget. And tonight, I was done being the one who swallowed truths so others could feast on illusions. Lorraine never once looked my way. Delaney was basking in the glow, radiant, comfortable, completely unbothered, a woman untouched by consequence. Silas stood from his seat at the head table, clearing his throat. He raised his glass, and I stood too. There wasn't a single gasp, just a low shift of chairs, a flutter of confusion. I walked to the mic, each step unhurried, each breath steady. I didn't look at anyone in particular. I didn't have to. "Most of you don't know me," I began. "I'm the bride's sister." That sentence alone caused a stir. I could feel it, the murmur threading from one table to the next. "I wasn't invited, but I'm here anyway." Delaney's face barely moved, but her hand gripped the stem of her glass tighter. "This room," I said, gesturing around us, "the florals, the linen napkins, the $1,000 DJ, were paid for from an account meant for something else, a family reunion fund. It was created after our father died. I contributed every dollar to it." No one interrupted, but the silence was beginning to vibrate. And without my knowledge or consent, $50,000 of that money was withdrawn by Delaney. I let it sit, let it echo. Then I pulled the folder from my bag and laid it open on the table beside me. These are the withdrawal logs, the wire transfer records, the statements with her name on them. Cameron shifted in his seat. Lorraine lowered her head. Delaney still hadn't moved. "I'm not here to ruin this day," I said softly. "That's not why I came. I'm here because this pretending has gone on long enough." I turned slightly, just enough to let the microphone catch my breath. "This isn't revenge. It's remembrance of what I gave, of what you erased, and of who I am, whether you name me or not." I closed the folder, stepped away from the mic, and walked toward the back of the room. And then I heard it. Clapping. First from someone near the bar, then another from the side table. Soft, uncertain, but real. As I reached the edge of the dance floor, I heard Silas behind me. "You deserved better than this," he said. Not loudly, but clearly. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Delaney did. She stood there frozen, veil shifted slightly, eyes wide, not with rage but recognition. The applause didn't last long, but it didn't have to. I had said what needed saying. The ballroom was nearly empty. The lights had dimmed, the music cut off. Someone had forgotten to blow out the candles, and the scent of vanilla clung to the air, too sweet for a space that had gone so still. I was gathering my coat from the back of a chair when I saw her, Lorraine, standing by the exit like she had been waiting. She didn't wave, didn't speak, just held out an envelope, worn at the edges, her fingers pinching it like it might fall apart. "For you," she said. I took it without a word. There was no name on the front, just a fold so sharp it looked like it had been opened and closed a dozen times. Back in the hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. I already knew what it was before I read the first line. It was his handwriting, my father's, slanted and neat. The date at the top was 2 months before he died. And then the sentence that didn't even try to soften the blow. "Cressida won't need this. She's too logical, too independent." I read it twice, then once more, slower. It wasn't a compliment. It was a categorization, an excuse, a decision made long before I had a say. I had always assumed the distance between me and my parents was circumstantial, grown from misunderstandings, from my need for space, from theirs. But now I understood. The distance wasn't accidental, it was intentional. I unfolded the rest of the note, expecting maybe an apology buried somewhere in the language. But there was none. Just his thoughts on what Delaney needed, what the family legacy required, what a daughter like me would never demand. I found the tin on my mother's nightstand, the old biscuit tin I used to keep my childhood treasures in, pressed flowers, glitter pens, a pink ribbon from a second-place science fair. Now it held this letter. Of course it did. When I was 8, I had drawn him a picture of a house, a little stick figure family on the porch. He had smiled, folded it, and placed it in this tin like it meant something. That was the only thing of mine he had ever saved. Until this. I folded the letter again, slower this time, and slipped it back into the tin. When I walked into the kitchen, Lorraine was sitting at the table with her hands around a mug she hadn't touched. "You keep it," I said quietly, placing the tin in front of her. "It was never mine." She opened her mouth, but whatever she meant to say crumbled in the back of her throat. I didn't wait. Outside, the sky had turned that soft shade of late dusk. Not quite dark, not quite forgiving. I pulled my coat tighter and walked until the house disappeared behind the trees. Back in my apartment, I placed my bag by the door and stood in the quiet for a long time. Then I opened my phone and deleted the family group chat. I typed one message to Joanna. "I'm done with the script. Time to write my own ending." She replied 3 seconds later. Finally. The morning light seeped through the hotel curtains, like a quiet reminder that everything had already happened. No more vows, no more speeches, no more pretending. I sat up slowly, blinking at the silence. My green dress from the night before was folded neatly on the chair, a shadow of the woman who had stood at that microphone and told the truth. Calm, unapologetic, undeniable. I made coffee. Not because I wanted it, but because the sound, the warmth, the ritual made things feel manageable. I stood by the window and watched the fog curl over the Oregon hills, wrapping the world in a softness that didn't match the weight in my chest. My phone buzzed. 7 unread messages. A voice memo from Delaney. Long. Probably rehearsed. A paragraph from Lorraine with no subject line. And a short, almost clinical text from Cameron. "We need to talk." I didn't press play. Instead, I texted Joanna. "Did I go too far?" Her reply came instantly. "You didn't go far enough." I smiled without meaning to, just a small curl of the mouth, like my body recognized a freedom my heart hadn't caught up to yet. I packed slowly, the folder with the statements, the wedding program someone had left on a table, the letter, not to use, not to return, just to keep, to remind myself I hadn't imagined it. I made one stop before leaving. The house hadn't changed. Same porch swing, same uneven pavers, same wind chime that never quite stayed in tune. Lorraine was sitting on the steps, a blanket over her knees. She looked smaller than I remembered. She handed me a tote bag without speaking. Inside, a few old books, a ceramic heart I had painted in 3rd grade, a lanyard from my first job. "You could have told me," I said, voice steady. She didn't argue, she didn't apologize, just silence. I nodded, turned, and walked down the path. Uncle Rob had offered me a ride back to Portland. I declined. I walked to the station with the air biting at my cheeks, and for once it didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like choosing the long road, quiet and clear and mine. I used to think that if I just stayed good, if I didn't cause trouble, didn't take up too much space, they'd finally see me. They'd finally hear me. But I don't need to be seen by people who only look through me. Back in Portland, I signed a lease for a small studio with creaky floors, and one wall I painted sage green. I unpacked the box, slid the biscuit tin onto the shelf, unopened. I didn't throw it away. I just didn't need to open it anymore. A week later, a small white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single card. "You were right. I'm sorry. Delaney." I placed it inside the tin, still unopened. That night I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. At the top I typed, "The guest who wasn't invited." And then I kept going. Not because the story was over, but because I was finally the one writing it. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I spent years trying to be the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who didn't rock the boat. But silence doesn't earn you respect. It just makes your absence easier to arrange. What I've learned is this: you can't force people to value you, but you can stop handing them the pen to write your story. I didn't burn bridges, I just stopped carrying the weight of them. Now I'm curious. Have you ever been the invisible one in your own family? How did you take back your voice? Let's talk in the comments. If this story touched you, comment 1, or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I'd love to hear your side. And hey, if you want more stories that speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more to come.